What's up, guys? Richard here, back with another episode of the Cosmic I Ching series. I've got a haircut and ready to go with finishing up this series. It's been a great series so far. I hope you guys have learned a lot. It's really hard to not learn a lot, in my opinion, when you're going through this book, sincerely. Um, so we're on Hexagram 57 today, the penetrating, which is wind over wind, the soft wind penetrating. The judgment, the penetrating. Success through what is small. It furthers one to have somewhere to go. It furthers one to see the great man. In this hexagram, the sage describes the cosmic principle of penetration. It has several fields of application. Penetration is the way our thoughts penetrate through the light to the sage when we ask for help, and is the way the sage's thoughts penetrate to us as insights, intuitions, mind flashes, and correct responses to emergency situations. It is the means by which our thoughts get to the root cause of problems. It is the way our thoughts communicate with others' inner truth. It is the means by which the inner yes and inner no reach all parts of our own psyche and body. It is how the inner yes or inner no, when said to others, communicates to their inner truth. It is the way the inner no corrects projections, spells, and poison arrows and negative thoughts by meeting them in the realm of consciousness and by initiating transformation. It is the way chi is transmitted to our hearts from the cosmic source to renew our life force. That rhymed. Penetration describes the way the smallest correct thoughts communicate sympathetically through inner channels between people. It contrasts with the way the smallest incorrect thoughts and intentions communicate by disharmonious vibrations that are felt by a person's various senses. Such vibrations also communicate a person's doubts, fears, and feelings of guilt. Penetrating to the root causes of problems is the undertaking shown by the lines of this hexagram. It is the way the person consulting the sage goes about finding incorrect phrases and images in his inner program that act out in his life in the form of impulses and irrational behavior, and which can cause him inner distress, illness, and a fate. Correct thoughts and feelings that penetrate invisibly to others' inner truth are loving and caring thoughts, and also feelings of gratitude or regret. They can also be conscious inner messages that warn another that he will create a fate if he continues in his wrong acts, or tell him that he can ask for help from the cosmos. Conscious thoughts that come from inner truth can also make someone aware of a mistaken idea or belief without any need for them to be spoken aloud. When the inner yes and inner no are said to one's body cells, they heal conditions of ill health. The inner yes is said to affirm the importance of the cells and to validate the senses they contain. The inner no is said to the phrases that have diminished the importance of certain body parts, as when the mind or soul are elevated over the body. Such conscious affirmation of the body by the mind removes the blocks that prevented the body from receiving its vital chi energy from the heart. The inner yes is likewise said to the love one feels for another and to the other's true self. The inner no is said to all aspects of the ego in oneself or in another. The inner no penetrates to the true self and strengthens it. The inner no, said as a conscious acknowledgement of one's feelings of inner truth, penetrates to the invisible world of the helpers, engaging them in the need of the moment. The helper that is most activated by it is the helper of transformation. This is one of the meanings of success through the small. Also, when the conscious mind acknowledges the inner feeling of needing help, this is the modesty that draws the sage to his side. Penetrating also describes the ability of a person who is connected with his feelings of inner truth, thus is able to distinguish thought, which is of cosmic origin, from thought, which is the activity of the fantasy and rational minds. He is also able, through his senses, to distinguish half-truths from untruths. Generally, half-truths and untruths feel incomplete or questionable, causing the person to ponder them. But when the riddle in them is swallowed as wisdom, instead of being rejected until thoroughly understood, then the person ignores his feelings. These distinctions are made by the common sense. Common sense, however, is often held under a spell created by seeing the body with its myriad senses as animal, therefore inferior. Putting a guilt spell on our animal bodily nature also blocks our common sense. The words of the judgment, it furthers one to have somewhere to go, refer to asking questions of the sage that lead to penetrating to the inner truth of a matter. All ideas that people take for granted as true need to be questioned. People often consult the sage to find out what to do. They transpose their futile idea of the father to the sage, hoping to be told whether their ideas and plans will bring good fortune, success, or misfortune and failure. The sage will indeed answer, but the person may misunderstand the answer and act incorrectly if he does not know why an idea, plan, or attitude brings good fortune or misfortune. If he is to succeed enduringly and not simply be tricked by the ego, he needs to penetrate to and understand the cosmic principles of harmony that underlie all existence. Penetrating to the basics leads to the clarity of view pictured by the Chinese ideogram E in the name I Ching. Like laws of physics, these basic laws set the correct limits that apply to human thought and action. To go against them or exceed them is like trying to fly without wings. With the help of the sage, a person can penetrate to these basic principles. They are reflected in his own inner truth. Only when a person understands these principles can he know whether his thoughts and actions will lead to a success that endures or misfortune. Gaining clarity to understand the inner truth of each situation is the first goal of consulting the sage. The phrase, "it furthers one to see the great man," is counsel for the person receiving this hexagram to make the sage of the I Ching his teacher. The way the sage teaches is through the penetrating influence of inner truth. Penetration breaks through into a person's consciousness as a realization, just when he is ready for that particular realization. The sage does not exceed what the student is ready to perceive or superimpose knowledge upon him. Neither does it engage in inner argument or reasoning, or engage in any effort to prove the validity of its counsel. It only engages in cooperation with the student's receptivity and openness. It leads him to experience the cosmic truths for himself within the context of his daily life situations. Thus, the person helped feels the personal essence of that truth, its harmony, and its resonance with his whole being. Through this process of daily learning, his confidence in his inner truth, which had been shattered or eroded through the conditioning process of the collective ego, is gradually reestablished. Gradually, then, his true self grows up and becomes a mature adult. Receiving this hexagram may be telling a person that he needs to penetrate to the root of the problem at hand by asking the sage to help him understand what he needs to know. He's being counseled to understand its inner meaning as well as its outer components. At the root of all interpersonal problems lie false seed phrases and or images that are embedded in people's hearts. In particular, he needs to look for fears and doubts that were created in childhood. And this is a huge, massive childhood conditioning program we're talking about here, this collective ego, this ego, and we don't even realize it. But that's why it's so able to be so effective, because we don't get to the root of the problem. As noted above, this hexagram also wants to make the person receiving it aware of the penetrating/transforming effect of saying the inner no to incorrect actions in himself and in others. The way ego-driven thoughts and feelings communicate from one person to another is quite different. They communicate in the form of vibrations given off by pressure, fear, doubt, and gossip. Negative thoughts gain acceptance by others through creating fears that cause them to doubt their inner truth. Negative thoughts and feelings can also take on the form of mental demons that jump from shoulder to shoulder, whispering into each person's ear. These fears and doubts open the door to unpleasant experiences and difficult situations. They also put spells and projections upon the person and those around him, keeping them trapped in their unfavorable behaviors. Bad intentions of an aggressor register in the intended victim as an inner warning. Whether the person warned acts on his inner sense of caution depends on whether he habitually dismisses it. Success to the small refers to listening to those small warnings. Generally speaking, people with bad intentions sense through their inner feelings those persons around them who habitually dismiss their inner sense of caution and are drawn to them. In another example, the desire of a person who is actively looking for a mate is communicated by vibration. Since the desire comes from the ego in him rather than from his inner truth, he sends the message that his inner space is an open house to all prospective candidates. Those he draws are the exact complement to the ego in himself. This mental approach contrasts with the person who asks the cosmos to bring him the person who is correct for him in all respects and turns the matter over to the cosmos. He will find the person who complements his true nature. The person may also receive this hexagram when his negative inner thoughts are jumping onto another, with the effect of repelling him or inciting resistance. His thoughts are instigating the negative reaction, causing the person to behave exactly as he has been projected to behave. Moreover, such thoughts can create a fate. Line 1. In advancing and in retreating, the perseverance of a warrior furthers. This line warns a person that in contemplating just the appearance of things and drawing the superficial conclusions to which this leads, he will create spells or projections. The ego is ever busy in this kind of activity, keeping the observations focused on the plane of the apparent, because doing so keeps the person from consulting his inner feelings and common sense. In this manner, the ego maintains control of the personality. Perseverance of a warrior refers to as being on guard against the quick conclusions the ego likes to draw and maintaining contact with his inner feelings. An example is the phrase or realization, I am getting older. If the person is not inwardly alert, this statement will draw to mind images and traditional beliefs about aging, which have to do with going toward death, and in the process, being attacked by various ailments and the shrinking of his abilities. Adopting these images puts projections and spells upon himself. The unfortunate consequences are guaranteed once the projections or spells have been programmed into the psyche. This line warns the person to be on guard, to listen to the kinds of preconceptions that have entered his mind about a given situation, and to reject them all by saying the inner no to them. Advancing and retreating the perseverance of the warrior also describes the way a person says the inner no to another's incorrect behavior. Advancing refers to saying the inner no, and retreating means turning the matter over to the helpers and disengaging. The perseverance of a warrior represents maintaining a neutral awareness of the situation. Line 2, penetration under the bed. Helpers are used in great numbers. Good fortune. Under the bed is a metaphor for a projection or spell that is influencing a person or situation without his being aware of it. A spell may have been put on him or another at a prior time, which is now causing either ill health or behavioral problems. The line counsels the person to penetrate to the phrases and or images of the spell by identifying when it was installed, by whom, and then to evoke the memory of the time so that the phrases become evident. The helpers are the ones that are needed to break it. In the case of all spells which affect a person's health, looking for relief from traditional sources, either in medicine, religion, science, or in the esoteric field, will at best only drive the symptoms to a new location, so long as the seeds of the problem have not been removed from that person's psyche. Line 3, repeated penetration, humiliation. Repeated penetration refers to seeking a solution to a problem by employing one traditional or conventional means of help after another. Humiliation refers to the fact that none of the remedies available from these sources is of help, because the decisive factor is the sage that alone can activate the helpers needed. By seeing the decisive help as coming from humans alone, a person obstructs or imprisons the sage, and thus prevents the sage from helping him with the particular matter at hand. Often, the problem at hand is caused by the very phrases and images a person has adopted that dismiss the sage or slander nature, including his own nature. Examples are phrases about the sage. How can you trust something invisible? How do you know you can acquire the sage's help? This is a matter that only people can decide. The sage is just another belief. It's all just more smoke and mirrors. Coins cannot connect you with the cosmos. Helpers are a delusion. The invisible world is a fantasy. There's no relationship between thought and hard fact. You are relying on pure faith fluff. Other examples are phrases referring to public matters or politics. What can you do when the power belongs to the authorities? Only authorities can influence authorities. Wrong. I don't care about the means. What counts is the end. You have to take matters in hand and do this yourself. Still, other phrases are in regard to illness. Nature's means are unreliable. Nature is at fault. It's a natural defect. You are born with some defect, including the idea of original sin. In all such situations, it is wise to use the RTCM, the retrospective 3-coin method, to see if projection spells or poison arrows need to be identified and removed. This line also refers to a person's repeatedly falling back on doubt about the cosmic way. It is not faith or trust that is needed, as suggested by the collective ego, but the suspension of disbelief that makes an opening for the sage to come to help. Line 4, remorse vanishes. During the hunt, 3 kinds of game are caught. Remorse vanishes refers to having found and eradicated the root cause of the problem at hand in seed phrases and images, which have created projections or spells. 3 kinds of game refer to the multitude of seemingly unrelated problems that were created by the projection or spell, which have now been resolved. 3 kinds of game can also refer to the 3 kinds of causes for a condition of ill health. 1, spells or poison arrows. 2, fate. Or 3, incorrect treatment due to a mistaken assessment of the causes. So there are three ways you can be in ill health: spells, projections, fate, which is also due to an incorrect thought or belief, or an incorrect treatment due to a mistaken assessment of the causes. Wow. That in itself is revolutionary right there. Line 5, being firmly correct brings good fortune. Remorse vanishes. Nothing that does not further. No beginning but an end. Before the change, 3 days. After the change, 3 days. Good fortune. Being firmly correct refers to the steps involved in freeing oneself from projections, spells, and poison arrows. It requires saying the inner no, A, to the person who has cast the projection, spell, or poison arrow, be it someone else or oneself, B, to the person who has unwittingly accepted it, be that someone else or oneself, and C, to each phrase and or image that comprises the projection, spell, or poison arrow. The last step, D, is to ask the sage and the helpers to delete it. Afterwards, it is appropriate to thank the sage and helpers for their help. This procedure is repeated for at least 3 days and is the meaning of the phrase, before the change, 3 days. After the change, 3 days refers to the time needed for the effect to take place. The word change refers to the transformation that is brought about by saying the inner no. No beginning but an end refers to the absolute end brought to the negative element that has been in the psyche for a long time. No beginning but an end also refers to the way to end disharmony by realizing that there is no such thing as a culprit. There are only mistaken ideas. Branding someone or something as a culprit freezes that person in their behavior through putting a spell on him. Then one side blames the other and vice versa, creating an ongoing warfare. To end the warfare, one needs to say the inner no to the idea of there being a culprit, and to free the other from the spell. The word culprit in and of itself creates demonic energy. It's the word itself. Through this act, and this is a prime example of the human's false use of language, which has created our present problems. So these are all self-created problems that we've created through the false use of language. It's really that simple. And we can correct it simply through correcting our use of language and correcting our mistaken ideas and beliefs with the help of the sage and the helpers. Through this act, both the vicious circle and the war are ended, restoring cosmic harmony. This line also refers to the necessity of putting an absolute end to the imps, dragons, and demons that compose the ego and which rampage through the psyche in demonic form. They have not been discussed much in this volume because by giving them names, their existence as objective entities is empowered. When we see them only as aggregates of consciousness that are composed of faulty seed phrases and images, they become disempowered. Then each phrase and image which composes them can be removed from the psyche through the inner know and with the help of the helpers. This removal disperses the clouds of disharmonious thought and deconstructs the imps, dragons, and demons, leaving us free of their demonic effects. Line 6, penetration under the bed. He loses his property and an axe. Perseverance brings misfortune. Penetration under the bed in this line is a metaphor for a person who is searching out the causes of his fate. Under the bed is a place where people have traditionally stored things. It here refers to his sorting through his past experiences for clues by categorizing them in the collective ego's terms of good or evil, right or wrong. So long as he does this, he will miss finding their inner truth and assign the wrong causes. Continuing in this manner will create a new fate. Losing his property refers to his disregard for his natural possession of common sense that would help him find the true causes of his fate. Losing his axe refers to his disregard for the ability of his word mind to make a correct decision when it is free from spells and from being harnessed to the defense of traditional beliefs. When free, the word mind is able to distinguish what is true from the cosmic standpoint and what is not, and to make the necessary decisions that require his independent judgment. When free, it also enables him to give the correct names to things. In following what the collective ego calls good and evil, right and wrong, a person also believes that the good and the right must be defended and promoted. This leads to employing force and resorting to the courts of law. Resorting to power invariably creates a fate. The person may receive this line as counsel to ask the sage to show him in meditation the inner truth of the matter. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe right there. It only takes a second, and I hope you're enjoying these videos. I really enjoy making them, and I'll see you guys in the next one.